Thank you for joining the Free Time Mastermind podcast. I'm your host, Robert Gaines, and so far across the multiple episodes, at least half of the guests had businesses that either offered a subscription or a membership style service, or they were planning to. Well, today we have a membership expert, John Robinson, from Many More Members, who developed the Many More Members method. And one thing that a lot of membership-based businesses struggle, at least in the beginning, is getting sales and getting the right type of marketing and then retaining their members. And we're going to get some fantastic insights from John with that regard. He's worked for multiple companies where he's been heavily involved in increasing their subscription members. And now he is a consultant helping businesses grow their subscriptions. And without further ado, here's John. I was preparing for, doing some research and also going back and looking at some past episodes. And I was surprised that even though this is probably, if my math is right, this will be episode 8, there's actually
All right.
some really interesting connections between all the guests. And I just wanted to share this with you.
Go ahead.
So I had interviewed Robin Spinell. He was the guitar player from Vancouver, British Columbia, and he's been playing guitar since 1974, and he had been in an international cover band, and now he's working in Vancouver and playing guitar on YouTube, and he's got this fantastic career going. And we talked a lot about that on the episode. And then more recently, and her episode is gonna go up this coming week. Deborah DeHaab, she's an expat coach, and she actually moved from a one-on-one expat, people moving from their primary country and moving somewhere else, and she went from a one-on-one model to a membership model. So there's a little bit of a connection. So you're a musician like Robin. You're involved in memberships, which Deborah is what's going to. And then to go down a little further down the rabbit hole, I was reviewing your posts, and you had this great quote from Seneca, which I won't say. They'll have to go to your Facebook page to see it. But I had Benny Vonken on, who is he's a big podcaster in the Stoic community and also has the site Street Stoics. So there's just, even in eight episodes, we have all of these connections between guests, which I thought was fantastic.
That is cool, yeah.
And I wanted to start off, since there was a little bit of a musical connection there. Of course, we want to focus on the business aspect of it, but it was actually your music that got you into becoming the membership specialist. Can you talk us about the transition from going on being on the road, and then the priorities at home changed a little bit, and you started this wonderful path of your current career?
Yeah, that's a good place to pick it up. So I was a musician playing drums in bands. And then when I settled down to have the family, the life on the road was a bit erratic and unpredictable, and I wanted something more stable for my kids. So I turned to teaching. It was a natural sidestep. It was the obvious thing. I didn't have a degree in anything. I had only done jobs in retail and whatnot. So plus, I loved it, right? And I had some mastery in it. Started teaching, and then what would happen is you would start doing the maths in your head, right? So you would say, like, well, if I get 10 students and they're paying 20 pound a week, I can earn this much. And then that they're paying you every week 20 pound, right? And then when they ring sick or they don't come, you don't get the money. And then you look at how long you can keep them, and you realize that, like, when you're keeping students is more important than getting new ones. And it wasn't so conscious at the time, like, now looking back, it's very apparent and very obvious. But yeah, so I would just go through that. And then I started teaching a little bit inside schools as well, right? So this was the first thing, was going to the houses, private, inside the house, one-on-one, right? And in the schools, I was very lucky. A lot of my story is it just felt like I fell into entrepreneurship. I fell in, like, I'm 40 already now, right? So I never really started. I mean, when you're a musician, you're a kind of entrepreneur, but you're doing it as a creative art rather than a business venture. So in the schools, the luck was that the type of schools I fell into started teaching group lessons. And group lessons, believe it or not, in the music industry, in the music education industry is still quite new. It's still quite like a lot of teachers saying, how can you teach music in groups? And I won't get into that on this podcast, but luckily I was very open-minded and I went along that road. And then I got my calculator out again and I'm saying, okay, well, if I'm doing group lessons, I can have this many students and I can charge this much and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, that was kind of the subscription model, right? And then when my story progressed and my experience grew, and I was the director of the music schools. You know, I was in the end of it, I was running the business model and building the team, and even I wasn't teaching anymore. I was literally just the director of the music school, right? So then I got really into the business model and the budgeting, and then started looking into marketing and leadership and building teams and systemizing things. And that's when I really like fell in love with business. And as a dichotomy, my in-laws all had businesses. So I grew up in a kind of council estate style lifestyle in England. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No, no,
It's
help us out.
well, it's like when you get the welfare, the dole, you know, the government kind
Oh
of
yeah,
pays. You know, so
absolutely.
you're on the bottom of you're not poor because you're in England. There's no way you could say you were poor, but you know, my mum was in and out of marriages and we were moving around a lot. And it was a bit of a kind of, you either had a job or you're on benefit system, right? In my
Yes.
world, this is what I grew up in, right? So when I got married, my wife's family all had businesses. So I saw that. And then I started having the experience of businesses running the music schools. And then that was it for me. I was just like, right, membership, subscription, call it what you want. And then we were doing brick and mortar. I always got seduced by this idea of doing it online to the world. The grass is always greener on the other side, isn't it? I thought, well, like I'm working in this Emirate in the UAE trying to fill the music school. There's only however many people within a radius who can come to lessons in this school. So that's my market cap, right? But if I go online, I can teach the whole world, right? So that was the vision, and time passed. You know, I didn't have we can probably get into it a bit more, but just to wrap up the short story is that I was a little bit afraid to start the business for a while because I had the stable income and the family, and it was a great position, and I had all the doubts and whatnot. But finally, I did it. You know, it's been a couple of years. I'm into my third year of business now, and that's the short story of what led us to where we are today, Robert.
Fantastic. I've said to many friends, if you prioritize your family, you won't have any regrets about your business decisions. You know, when that's your focus, when that's your reason for getting up and doing, then I don't know what higher purpose you could serve. Maybe some spiritual beyond that, but
Yeah.
right below that, family. If that's your focus, obviously, that's a very good North Star for you to be guided by. Speaking of that, I usually start off with location, but I wanted to say that when you and I first began speaking, I recognized the name of your town, and I was trying to think why. So, of course, Wikipedia, I looked it up. Famous sculpture, Angel of the North, that you have,
Yeah.
and help us out with the pronunciation of your town. We'll put it down here. Of course, I could probably do it, but you could
Well,
do it better.
the landmark is Newcastle, right? And I'm
Newcastle.
like in a sort of suburb town, like very close to it. It's technically in the county of Newcastle, but it's called Jarrow. And then I would be very surprised if any of your listeners have heard of that.
That's fantastic. And did you see the sculpture they have? I took a one in Dallas that clearly they were influenced by the Angel of the North, and I thought, you know, theirs was called Icarus. You know, different purpose, different character, but I could see that they had maybe borrowed some style from it.
Yeah, perhaps it was even the same artist. He was quite a famous artist who made the Angel of the North.
And how?
It commissioned from.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
I forgot his name though. I'm afraid.
It's a beautiful. I'd love to see it. You know, as we talked, you know, I have some of my heritage there in the
Hmm.
UK, and we went back as a lot of Americans do because we're all here from. Most of us are here from somewhere else. We spend
Hmm.
a lot of time looking at genealogy more here because again, we're a nation of immigrants, so we have some pretty deep ties there in the UK, in various areas, a little bit in Germany too. But I've been to Germany. I've spent some time there and in the regions of where my ancestors were from. But it's a UK trip is on the map. But definitely want to get it seems like it's very interesting in the north. That seems to be where the most fun happens, you know. So I'd like to see what's going on up there.
Yeah, well, it depends what your idea of fun is. We have the kind of north is you get all the countryside, and the south you get all the city hustle and bustle. So if you like city and all that stuff, go to London. If you want to see the country, go to the lakes the and the north.
Yes,
Even
yes,
Even Scotland, you know.
the outside's definitely more my forte. So we'll put that.
Me too, Robert.
And you've actually worked for a couple of, because when we talked before, you had mentioned that it was three seven-figure businesses. Can you walk us just
Mm,
through that career transition? Because the part that I was keen on is I went to university late. I went on on the Army GI Bill, but I was in my 30s when I went back to the university. And I have told a few people in private conversation that if I had it to do over, I might not have gone to university because entrepreneurs tend to be self-educated. I know that we tend to sometimes over romanticize the college dropouts in the United States. You know, the guy that started Facebook was a dropout. Bill Gates, I believe he was a drop. There's these really prominent dropouts, but I don't think we should romanticize the dropout portion. We should romanticize the self-education. And I'm sure
mhm.
when you were making that first transition from musician and you worked your way up in that school, it sounded like you started building these incredible skill sets. Now, did that come directly from mentors, or did you just pick the right books? Because there are some wonderful books out there on those subjects.
For sure, yeah, mix really. I like you've probably heard that there's no such thing as luck, right? I say I fell into this line of work, and I was very lucky with the opportunities that came to me. But I did, if I'm honest, since you asked, I did prepare a lot. But again, it was mostly through God's gift to me, which is my brain and my character. So I'm the kind of person who has addictive personality, right? And at the time, I didn't realize you could get addicted to learning, addicted to insight, they call it. And like when you learn something new, you get this like sensation in your mind that feels great. So I was hooked on that, man. I was driving around from lesson to lesson. If you remember, I go to one-on-one lessons around at the time I was in Dubai. So there would be had this you wouldn't believe this. I had this tracker app on my phone, which was like a lifestyle app, and it tracks your movements. And I was spending an average of 19 hours a week on the road, which would include driving my kids to school and driving around a little bit. But the majority of it would be at my busiest, I was working 6, 7 days a week because I would do gigs in the evening, performing the music, and then I would teach in the daytime. I was working a lot in the early days. But I was listening to podcasts a lot and audiobooks, and I would just be listening and absorbing as much as I could. And I would look into things like education and coaching methodologies and learning principles, e-learning techniques, leadership, mindset, even relationship and parenting, just whatever I could get my hands on. And yeah, that shaped me, and I started to apply these things what I'd been learning in my lessons and in my classes, and it reached a point where I started to stand out. After about 3 or 4 years of this, and my schedule was full. I was one of the only drum teachers around who would just had a full schedule and would just keep and parents and students would praise me from time to time, and it just started to stack up. And I got noticed. My managers would recognize this, and they started to give me more and more responsibilities. So as the managerial responsibilities came on my plate, and the leadership roles, then I would turn to leadership, and I would look into books and podcasts, and my managers were my mentors. I didn't really have like I would listen to these online gurus who would have these glamorous mentors who would like take them through, some kind of Star Wars epic journey of transformation. I never really had that, but I did have some influential characters in my life who helped to train me up as well. And still to today, when I find myself going outside my comfort zone, or when I find myself feeling a little bit afraid or something, I'll retreat to learning. If I'm faced with something that I'm a little bit nervous about, I'll go and try and study how to achieve that thing, which is total procrastination. um, but it's just a little like a habit, 10 plus years of doing it.
I
Yeah,
think that's sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I read 30, 40, 50 books a year. I was taking every online course I could find, you could probably name any course online that was made 5 or 10 years ago, and I did it. Um, but I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't.
And that's a great strategy when you go into something new. Well, at least my tendency, I love audiobooks.
Mm.
And I have to set a lot at work. So I prefer the audiobooks because I'm not at the desk. I can be on the move. I can drive. I can speed it up too if I need to get
Yeah.
through a lot of information. And one thing I started, it's been at least maybe about 10 years ago. If I'm going to tackle a new subject or I'm about to go into a new venture or something that requires a little bit more intellectual heavy lifting, I'll usually get the three best books on it, get through them, and then start the project that way. At the very least, so a friend of mine and I, we always talk about that we at least need to have the language of that industry or of that, because whether you're a physicist, a mathematician, or a musician, there's an internal language there. There are
Mm,
acronyms. So when I go through three books on a subject, I can at least speak to someone who's a specialist in that, and we have a common language. They have the learning, they have the real knowledge, but I know how to communicate my ideas, and they're like engineers have very specific ways of speaking. So I try
right.
to grab, three books so that I can at least have a good communication. Same thing like learning a language, really. If you go to the foreign country, at least pick up, some basics. And I think usually three books will get you conversational in whatever subject. So I think that's a fantastic strategy. And again, the people that are hungry for knowledge tend to do very well as entrepreneurs, because if a business isn't growing, if you're not growing, your competition's growing. So it gets very tough out there. You need to be constantly evolving, more so now in 2024 than before. When we were children, we saw businesses that stayed open 30, 40 years, brick and
Mm,
mortar businesses, and those, through a successive number of major changes in the world in the last 20, 25 years. When I was a kid, we knew the man who owned the hardware store. Him and his wife would
yeah,
run it. And you can't barely find a hardware store owned by a family in the United States anymore. It's
yeah.
almost unheard of. But I'm going to make a presumption, John, and tell me if I'm wrong. Something that was more um, like my generation is a little bit was more of a typical example in the United States of this. But when you started to work for those schools, because of your age, you were born into the computer age. I when I got on computers, the internet didn't exist yet, and it did
Right.
a few years later. So I got a really early start with computers, but not at the level of sophistication your generation did. But I would think as you worked your way up the ladder there, you were working with people a generation or two older than you that probably didn't understand the value of internet marketing. And you had this
Yeah.
great understanding because you were born into it. So I'm sure you were in those meetings telling them, we can do this, that, and it was just things that were unfamiliar to them. And I'm sure subsequent generations younger than us will be teaching us the new changes and things. Did you experience that where you helped bridge the technological gap for the people on the levels above in those companies?
Yeah, for sure. And I just wanted to just touch on one point about the three book strategy you shared and my experience with learning, and for any of your listeners who are inspired to go and learn and read and study, or for those who already do it, they'll probably already know what I'm about to say. But there are people like you said who have a thirst for knowledge, and you said they make great entrepreneurs, but really it's the action. It has to get into some kind of
That's right.
action. Like I spent so many years just studying, and yes, I was taking things into action bit by bit, but I wasn't very deliberate and consistent. So I just want to caution anybody on that. And
Sure.
and I heard this, what I just said there, I heard that a lot, and I ignore that advice. I would just kept because I was addicted to the insight, right? I wasn't learning for progression in a deliberate way, you know. I wasn't making plans and sticking to them. And any action I did, I wouldn't stay consistent. After a few months, I would be on to the next thing. I would bounce from thing to thing. I was that guy. And still have a degree of that in my character. So just wanted to caution any of your
Sure.
because I mean, if
Absolutely.
one person hears that and takes it on, it can really change their life. Yes, have a thirst for knowledge. Yes, read and study. But at the end of the day, it's the entrepreneurs who take consistent action that succeed. Yes, they do learn how to take that action better. But and part of my to get to your question, unless you wanted to comment.
I was just going to say that as far as the discovery of information, because I know you and I obviously we get really excited when we learn something new. Like
Yeah,
if I run into somebody who's an expert in something I've never heard about, I love to absorb that information. You know, anything new, I like to pull in.
yeah,
And physicist Richard Feynman even had a great book called The Pleasure of Finding Things Out,
right.
and how curiosity leads to, of course, obviously he was a legendary physicist. He was on the Manhattan Project. He was involved in determining what happened to the space shuttle, and also a very great writer, a great and a hand drummer too. He was a percussionist as well.
Right.
But so there is that joy, but you're absolutely right. I was told a quote a few years ago, and I thought it was a little pompous when I first heard it because I couldn't identify with it. Still can't monetarily, but the more I started to think about it, the more it made sense. And someone said, millionaires worry about money, billionaires worry about execution. So if you look at the type of people that billionaires try to surround themselves with are the people that get things done,
Yeah.
because there's a sea of ideas. Look at how many podcasters there are. Look at how many musicians there are. Look at how many,
Yeah.
but at the very top, there's not a lot of room, and it has to be those people that are focused on action. And off the top of my head, I can't think of any good books that um, other than there was a simple book years ago called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And of
Yeah.
course, the book is fantastic, but you could just read the title and keep that in your mind as a mantra and
Yeah.
move forward with that. Because it's normal to feel the fear
Yeah.
of get, how did you feel when you played in front of people as a drummer for the first time, or your first public performance? I'm sure you weren't
Yeah.
like ready, feeling 100% confident.
Yeah, definitely. There's times when yeah, it depends on the scale of the performance, but there was you always get a bit nervous until you get through it the first couple of minutes. And whenever I would start speaking on stage as well, I would be so afraid. I would and I had a little trick. Your viewers might like this as well, your listeners. The the moment I would start to get sweaty palms and my mouth would go dry and I would start to feel a little bit like my chest is tight, right? I would just pause and I would just look around. I would just say, you know what, guys, and I would address the audience and I would say, I am actually terrified up here. I'm actually bricking it. I don't know what I'm doing. I feel really nervous, and it usually gets a laugh, and everyone just starts
Yes,
giggling, and then that
that's
laugh
right.
just seems to shatter the tension, and you're through the fear. And then once you get through the fear, you realize that the things you were afraid of never, very rarely ever
That's
happen.
right.
Um, and if you do fail, you can always just get back up and crack on. Um,
And that humility is very endearing to a public audience.
I think, yeah, I think
That
it helps, but
that
I'm definitely doing
smooth,
it for my own
perfect.
benefit.
And sometimes
Can't
people are a
that?
little bit more suspicious of that smooth, ultra smooth delivery, to
Yeah.
like the actor or actress that stumbles right before they take the Oscar. It's a
Mhm.
beautiful. And I think Jennifer Lawrence did that. She was in a big dress and just, I mean, fell completely like a tree, just bang. And then I think she won Best Actress that year. And it was just this wonderful moment because she was at the highest peak of her career. But she was the type of person that just brushed it off and made it a joke. And
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the secret to the whole thing. Take it serious, do the action, but not too serious. Keep it fun and playful, but keep pushing, of course. What do you think is the cure for people? Because obviously I've done that myself. I know people that are like that are a little bit erratic in the application of effort. I think in the 1980s, probably around 1988, I read a book called Zen and the Martial Arts, and there's a lot of quotes in the book. It's a very tiny book. It's very positive. It's easy to get through. It still sells very well, and there's a quote in there that says, the water hollows the stone, not by its strength, but by its frequency. So even
Mm,
over time, a drop of water, as we've seen through
mhm.
waterfalls and other processes, that's why we have these smooth stones, can take something that's very, very hard in this world and smooth it
Yeah.
out or bore a hole straight through it. But what do you think is the key to obtaining that level of focus in business?
Wow. So it would probably be first and foremost applying yourself on the right path. I think we must, I believe in my heart that we all given, I even said before, God-given strengths. You know, if you believe in God or whatever you call it, the universe has given you blue eyes or brown eyes, right? White skin or dark skin, right? The universe has also given you a set of aptitudes in your character, certain things that you just value more than others, and certain like I said, I'm a fast starter. I could work on that, you know. I could work on being seeing things through more. I could devote my whole life to finishing things. But really my strength is in starting, just to oversimplify. And some of your viewers might be the opposite. Some of your listeners, they might be the kind of person who kind of gets started. So they could spend hours just trying to figure out, how am I going to get started? So if we do personality tests, they're great, you know. If we look at our past experiences, if we look for signs of flow, right? Things that we get in a flow state with, these are clues to what where our God-given strengths are best suited to. I think if we figure that out, for me, it's, you know, empowering individual growth through innovation, right? That's the fancy way of just saying I like to help people be the best self, right? But I like to use creative and innovative ways to pull them into that. Um, and I found that out through AI. I can give you a very practical, if for those of your listeners who love a practical thing, they can write this down or remember this, and they can go and do this. And this is life changing. And you don't, this isn't in any books or anything. You take a bunch of personality tests, as many as you can. Some of them are free, some of them you pay for. Do as many as you can, right? As many as you can. Get all the results, download them. They usually give you the results, right, in a PDF. You can download your results. And then 4 years ago, before 2 years ago, before AI came along, you would have to sit and read these things, right? And I did. The amount of, because some of the results you get are like 10, 20, 30 page PDFs, you know, and you sit and you read it and it's self-gratifying. You're like, yeah, that is me. Yeah, that is me. But it's not very, for me at least, I didn't find it very useful, very practical. I didn't really manage to pull anything from it. So what you do is you take all these personality tests, you get all of these results, and then you just paste them into the chatbot, your favorite AI, whichever one you like to use, and you just say, AI, dude, check these personality tests I just did and tell me what's my X factor. Tell me what's my sole purpose. Tell me what's the one thing that I can be better than anyone else at the world at. And then it told me empowering individual growth through innovation. I mean, even me just sharing this one tip, it's such an innovative way for somebody to find out their sole purpose, isn't it? Their best. And when you know your sole purpose, then you can go after any rock in the world and wear it down. You can take on diamonds and slowly drip it smooth. You know, so I believe that the answer is probably not even needing to focus. I think if you're finding yourself having to focus, probably not your best strength. There are always going to be situations where we have to apply ourselves and focus through to get to a result. Definitely, you know, especially as these, if we're more of a solopreneur, a one or two man show, you know, trying to get started in business, we are going to have to do things we don't like doing and find ways to focus and get through them. But if the overall vision and the overall activity that we're doing, if it's aligned with our sole purpose, it will be effortless. We will not need to focus. We will lose track of time. We will get results far beyond what anyone else could ever get. And we're also fulfilling God's purpose or our own purpose, you know, so we feel great about it.
We're all seeking some form of transformation, whether it be to lose 20 pounds, become a drummer, get more members on the website. We're all seeking to go from where we are to somewhere else. So
Yes.
without that love or without the passion driving behind that intellectual process, I think really those two things go together really well. Wouldn't you agree that your kids are your best reminder of why you do what you
100%.
do?
100%. And if you don't have kids, there'll be another reason, usually for some kind of boost in status. But I think there's times when that's not enough. There's times when you also need the pain. You need the like when you've got a job, you go to school, don't you? Sorry, you go to work, you get up and you go, right? Why? Because if you don't go, you'll lose your job. You'll get sacked. And then what happens when
Right.
you lose your job? You don't have any money and you can't pay your bills, right? When you're an entrepreneur, you can quite easily just like, oh, I'll do it later, or especially if you
That's
work,
right.
you work, oh, it's okay if I skip a week. And because you're not going to get sacked, right? You're your own
Mhm.
boss, right? So I think sometimes we need to manufacture that pressure.
Well,
And I understand this on an intellectual level, but I've not found a way to really I've got it written down. I've got these the painful consequences of failing, you could call them, right?
all
That's
right.
what I call them. I think I learned this from Garrett J. White, if you know him.
No, no.
Um, the painful consequences of failing is just listing out like what happens if it doesn't work, right? And then also the shame, so there's the painful
Oh,
consequences, but then there's like the shame, like what would and if you can connect to that pain, I can't. It's like when I read it, it just this is the solution that I believe can help in those days. And I'm coming clean with you now. I'm still practicing this. So yes, I have my kids, I have my desire, I have my soul purpose. You can see how passionate I am
sure.
I'm very positive person, but I think there are still times when I wake up and I don't do the work. There's still times when I have my doubt, or I'm not as productive as I would like to be. And if it was a job, I would have been pulled into the office and got disciplined. They would have said, John, what are you doing? It's been a whole week and you still haven't done this thing. Right. So if any of your listeners have heard this before, if they want to try to, maybe they're like me, and they have these drivers and they have these deep meaningful reasons, but they still find themselves unable sometimes to get themselves to do those things that are challenging. It's easy for me to do the things I love, but the things that are challenging, I have this document, I have these consequences, I'm practicing it. But really what we have to do is we have to feel, there are moments when I feel that shame, that like there was a time a long time ago, about maybe 10 years ago now, I had to borrow some money off my father-in-law,
Oh, wow.
right? Because my family didn't have it and we needed the money. And it was such a hard thing for me to go to my newly married, we'd only been married a year or two,
Oh,
and I was like, can I borrow some money? It was horrible. So I never wanted to do that again. I never wanted to be in that. That was painful and
sure.
shameful. So that helped to drive me forward as well. So just wanted to put in that devil's advocate of having
Yes.
both sides.
Absolutely. I think that I tell people whatever your fuel is, whether it be positive or negative, look at Alex Hormozy, who's a rock star right now. You
Mm,
can't go on any social media without seeing him. And he was very open about he has a competitive nature as am I. So if somebody wants to tempt me and get me into something, if they can tap into my competitiveness, because the jobs that I do, I still work in the insurance industry when we handle X number of whatever, whether we're handling claims or whatever, I want to be, if I'm not number one, I want to be number two at the very least. And I
mm,
don't do it for the sense of the ego. It's that I know that I'm operating at the highest level. It's for myself. I don't, and a lot of times the other crew members, team members, they might not even know we don't have a board. But I watch the board because I
interesting.
want to make sure that if I'm a race car driver going around the track, I want to take that car as far and as fast as I can. And if I'm okay with being number two, and
Okay.
I don't always have to be number one, but I need to know that I'm moving faster than everybody else. So one way
Yeah.
people can kind of get me involved in something is if they can tap into my competitiveness. Alex Hormozy had this, his father was very successful, and he had this drive to prove to his father that he could do it too on his own.
Right.
And I think Alex's father is a well-known doctor, a very successful doctor. So his
Right.
whole thing was like showing his dad, which I can't identify with that, but hey brother, if whatever fuel that you need to put in your tank works, sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's negative, and sometimes fear is the driver. So if you're going to get on stage at a TED talk, not TEDx, but the real the big TED, and you're going to be in front of 10,000 people, there's fear associated with that too, but there's also fear of the business failure, shaming your family, all of
Hmm.
those different things. So yeah, I say pour it all in the tank, whatever you need to get the
Yeah.
fuel to move forward. But I think that's fair. And I'm so fascinated that we got into this. Of course, we want to pivot to the memberships, but I think we've
Well,
already.
this could,
Yes,
your
exactly.
viewers could get, your listeners could get value from this. So, like, for example, I
Yes,
know the answer. By the way, I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask you anyway.
sure.
Are you more, so it's carrot and sticks, isn't it? Are you more excited to win or come second, or are you more afraid to not win and to lose?
I'm more of a,
Which one?
I think I'm more negatively motivated because I haven't done much with it, but I actually started writing about it because
I was
the,
wrong. I thought you were going to say you were more excited to win.
it's not, those, and I do sometimes might post a positive quote,
Uh-huh.
but those don't do much for me. Yeah, and I've even
Is
started to
that?
write about it because I don't think there are many books out there for people that are motivated negatively to help them and say, hey, look, you're not dysfunctional. You're just your fuel type is different. So
Yeah.
I'm a positive guy, so I can
Yeah.
completely understand why you would assume that about me. But
Yeah.
but internally, um, I like I'll give you an example. And of course I shouldn't say this on a podcast, but I'm going to say it anyway
Go on then.
because we're you've opened yourself, I'm going to open myself. Um Grant Cardone,
Uh-huh.
who's everywhere on social media and he's in real estate and a bunch of other things.
Yes.
I um I actually have a photo of him on my desktop. Sometimes he's my wallpaper. I
Right.
think he embodies everything that's the opposite of what I believe about business. Now, I'm not going to say anything bad about him. I'm
Okay.
just going to say, I just think we're on opposite sides of the universe. And
Mm.
he's very successful.
Yeah.
And I think that um, I like really warm, inspiring, helpful people that are concerned about their community and
Uh-huh.
have this deep love. And I just don't get that feeling from him. And I think, I want people that are more in that positive camp to win. And maybe if I can be a little part, not necessarily that I have to win, but if I can help be a pillar to the people that are the opposite of Grant Cardone. So that's my fuel. So I look at him as not a direct competitor where I have to
Yeah.
beat him, but I think the light should win over the darkness.
Yeah. So this is
Sorry,
a,
sorry, Grant. I'm not a
yeah.
fan, man. I'm not a fan. I'm sorry. And I talk about him unfortunately, he spends a lot of time inside my mind. He has no idea who I am and
Yeah,
probably
totally.
never will. But yes, that's what gets me. I want to see good people win and I
Yeah.
get excited by that. Whether I do whatever, I'm already doing what I want to do. I'm already
Yeah.
happy.
Good.
And I don't need to go because my needs are so small by design. Now,
Mhm.
I always had more extravagant dreams in my 20s and 30s,
Yeah.
but I'm like I said, I'm pretty much living the life that I want to do. And I'm still thinking about retirement and making sure that part of the journey is going to be okay. And some of this might be part of that. But in
Hmm.
general, I'd rather be just a helpful step along the way for other people on their way up. So that's what inspires me is watching other people win. So when I'm not in this heavy competitive environment where I'm in the insurance, maybe handling directly the claims, I'm a trainer so I
Wow.
get much more satisfaction watching somebody that I trained become a superstar in the industry than looking
Yeah.
at the board and seeing me number one. And I should have said that before, and you would have read me right then because I like seeing the people that I teach. And I'm like, hey, that you see John over there, that's he's one of mine. I trained him back in 2024.
Totally.
Yeah, I love that. He's one of
Wicked.
mine, and the feeling that those students must feel, whether it be primary school or university when those students come back years later. And I'm sure you've had that with your drum students as well. Some people have come back. They now have toured and gone around and done wonderful things.
Exactly.
I'd love to know, and I went through a lot of the social media that you had out there because, obviously I run a membership group too. We're transitioning. I've just made some changes to the site and some different things like that. And I think I might. You even had a video about open enrollment versus closed enrollment, and you mentioned some things. I mean, people honestly, people just need to go to your page. I don't want to spoil it. But you had this genius way where it could be kind of open and closed at the same time. And you were
Yeah.
talking about this loop, and I thought, wow, John, this guy really knows what he's talking about because it just made sense immediately. There are a lot of
Mhm.
people out there that talk about things, and I don't quickly understand what the value of. But when you're on there and you have these great short reels and videos where it's just how did you figure out how to do that? Because again, there's no fat in your videos. It's all meat. It's just really great high impact stuff. Where did you get that from?
Yeah, well, the reels force you to do that, don't they? Because they're so short and I've got so much
Yeah.
to say. I gotta say it in like 30 seconds or 90 seconds. But when I decided to specialize in memberships, I went about and took all of the membership trainings and studied all of the membership stuff out there, and there's patterns there's things what obviously work and things what don't work. And this is a method of kind of covering both. I mean, some people still do just have closed enrollments, and there are a lot of advantages to that. There's no one size fits all. For your listeners, if they're a bit confused, like you've got your membership site, right? And you can have anyone join at any time. That's called open enrollment, right? Or you can close the doors and you can open once a year, like a university does, right? This method is, in a way, probably the one that most people would recommend you start out with. It just makes it a bit easier to sell. There's real urgency in there. You get a chance to love on your members while the doors are closed, and then you get a chance to promote while the doors are open. As long as you're building your list all year long, please, if you have closed enrollment, you still must promote and build your email list while the doors are closed. But there's a method where you can just offer a special offer. You can create a bundle, you can create a mini course or some kind of offer, right? It can be a group of coaching packages, it can be anything. And then you sell it for a limited time, uh, along with space in your membership, right? So you would say, hey, and I would recommend if you do this method, you would keep your doors open all year long, right? So keep your doors open all year long, and then have the price quite high on your main site. This is an anchoring strategy, so you wouldn't really expect many people to come in through that gate into your membership, through that entry point, although some people will. Then you would create these promotions, which you would promote on your email list through some ads and through social media. And there would be as many as you can sustain. You would do one a month, right? Or you would do one a quarter, or whatever you can sustain, and whatever you can do. And basically what you do is you create a promotion, you leave it open for a couple of weeks. It's join my membership and get this special thing. Join my membership and get this awesome gift, free course, whatever you want it to be, plus a discount. Only 20 spaces available. Offer ends in 2 weeks. And this is kind of like you're closing the doors, aren't you? But you're not really closing the doors on your membership. You're closing the doors on this offer. So people know that you have a membership. They know they can join on your website at any time. But suddenly they see this promotion and they're like, oh, cool. I can join for a better price and also get this bonus. Yes, please. Um, and then also this urgency just helps them decide, because it's so easy to see your stuff on social or hear about you, or see an ad and check you out, and then they're like, "Oh, that looks cool. I'll get round to that." "Oh, this looks like a nice membership. I'll join that someday." And then that day might never come. Whereas if they've only got 2 weeks to get this bonus, then it helps with conversions.
And that's an interesting connection because in the marketing community you hear FOMO or fear of missing out, which is
Yeah.
a very powerful. I think in the tier of marketing, you have maybe a personal referral, then a testimonial, as far as power, and then kind of then tapping into the fear of missing out. Those are in those upward tiers of what causes conversion for someone to buy. But it's interesting because there's a connection there between you're creating that sense of urgency for them to make a purchase. And then before we were talking about in our personal lives, what are we using as fuel to make us move forward and to execute? Because again, a lot of people can have analysis paralysis. You can read 300 motivational books and business books and still not be an entrepreneur or open a business. There needs to be some reason for that sense of urgency. So now you're basically pulling that into a marketing situation to not artificially, but to in actuality create that sense of or sudden sense of urgency, like the door is about to close. And that's I thought about when I started mine, I looked at open enrollment versus closed enrollment. And open enrollment, the problem that I had with that, and I did start that way, is that from a billing perspective, I basically had to turn that over and buy another subscription. I had to become a member of a service that managed the subscriptions. And then later, as I realized the cost of that over the long term and how that was cutting the profitability, I thought, okay, if I made it closed enrollment and maybe only open the doors quarterly, I could manage it myself, which is very difficult because you have an Excel sheet. It's like imagine having a gym membership and everybody signed up at a different time, and you're trying to manually bill. It's very painful, you know. So you either spend the money to have it done by somebody else, or you spend the time to handle it yourself. But in your case, it's basically almost it's open enrollment with some incentives to go during particular times. So it's almost instead of there's doors open, doors closed, but in your case, it's almost like Schrodinger's cat. You know, the box is all the cat's there and it's not there at the same time. And I think that's brilliant. When I saw that video, I thought, wow, this guy really knows what he's
It's
talking
really
about.
closed enrollment, that strategy, because not many people will come through that. You leave your doors open at a full price
Right.
so that when people see your promotions, they're like, oh, cool, let me get in now. But then they've only got 2 weeks. And like I said, you can do this once a month if you can handle it. You can leave it open for 2 weeks, right? Then spend the next 2 weeks planning the next promotion
Mm.
and then do it again. And then you can do 11 or 12 of these a year, or you can do it every quarter. So if you know, there's a lot more to this strategy. So I'll share it. It's because if you remember when we spoke earlier, how I said a lot of my clients, they don't really need to be told what to do. They just need to focus on what works. Well, this is if you're selling a low price membership, you know, if your membership's like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, up to about 100 a month, right? This strategy works great. And you would create a bonus, right? So you've got your main membership, which has your main core content, which has your main transformational journey within it, right? And that's the reason anyone would come to you. Okay, they have the community, the coaching, they want mastery in a membership. They don't want information, they don't want knowledge, they want mastery. That's why they choose a membership rather than a course, because they get the course, but they get the repetition, the accountability, the community, and oftentimes there'll be coaching element within their group coaching from the membership owner. So you have your main content, your main journey, your main transformation, what you take people through within that membership, right? And then you create bonuses on top, which are related and which are supplementary to the main journey you would provide, right? Now, it's not a waste of time. It's not all lost, because it can just be a cheat sheet. It can be a guide. It can be a mini course. It can be just a 20-minute on-demand class training on a concept. It can even be something from inside your membership, just taught in isolation. So don't lose sleep over what these bonuses might be. The gold happens now, Robert, right? So whenever you make these bonuses, you release it, you close the doors. Now those bonuses get added into a bonus vault inside of your membership, a resource library, a bonus vault, call it whatever you like. And so now your members don't feel jealous that they paid full price and they got in, and
Right.
now these guys are getting these bonuses. So your members get the bonuses. They see the membership growing in value because now this bonus library, this additional resources section is getting a little bit more full.
Not only do you know the information, but the way you articulate it, I immediately understand it. Same thing with your videos on your page. I don't have to sit and go, well, I'm not sure what John means. I immediately know what you mean. There is, for the people watching that may not know, there is there's been a gigantic push towards membership models. And of course, we've even watched software. You know, when I was a kid, software would come in as well, floppy disks, but then CDs, and then you bought it online, and then now you don't own it anymore. So almost everything
Yeah,
is kind of going on this subscription, and of course, memberships are we're born to be on subscription. So everything is kind of going to this subscription model. So
totally.
no matter if somebody's even selling donuts in a storefront, believe it or not, there are ways that you could get a membership or a subscription in there. And as you alluded to very early in the episode, that you were looking at the students and figuring out how much you could make. One great thing about subscription-based models or membership models is that it's a really good basis of income that you can rely on every month. I mean, there's always going to be some churn. In other words, you're going to
Hmm.
lose some people, and you'll have to constantly refill that sales funnel. Whatever your churn is, you have to offset. If you don't want to grow, if you just want to stay the same, like I'm telling you, but I'm telling the audience, because you already know, if you're losing 10% a month through your churn or loss, you have to at least be maybe pushing, getting 12% back into the funnel, or maybe even more, just to stay alive, to stay the same. If you want to grow, obviously, you need to, just like a vase of water that has a hole in it, you
Yeah.
have to pour in more than you're losing. But
But if we've just got a minute, because you've
sure.
touched on a great point there with subscription models, and I just wanted to say, if
Yes.
anyone's on the fence and they're wondering whether they should do a subscription model, or so, for example, if you're in the information business and you're selling information, people don't want information or knowledge anymore. They want workflows, they want processes,
Mhm.
they want transformation. Really, the transformation is the thing they want, right? And you can do that through a course, but how many as soon as someone buys a course, they come and they're gone, right? So if you've got a course, let's say you're in information, you've got a method, you've got a thing to teach, right? You create the course. Now you build you and you're going to sell it for 100. Let's say you want to sell that course for 100. Well, now you just sell it for 100 a month, and then you put on some calls, like once a month. You'll put on a group call where everyone comes in and discusses the course. It's really can be that simple. And then if someone stays for just 1 month, well, you've made the 100 that you were going to make if it was a course. If someone stays for 2 months, now you've doubled your profits, right? Because otherwise, you make this course, you do a big course launch, you sell it, you make however much money. Now you've got to make another course and go and sell that, right? And then you make however much money. Instead, you just make this one course. There's nothing stopping you making a second course later on. But the point is, if someone stays for 3 months, now they're coming, they can repeat the course. So they're coming to these calls, and now you've made 300 a month. Okay. So, just to say to anybody, especially if you're in the information business, I strongly encourage you to do it as a membership model, which would basically be content and coaching and community, three C's: content, coaching, and community, right? The content is the information, right? The coaching, you can do as much or as little as you want. It can be you can hire someone, right? I would just do once a month as a minimum. If you can do more, do it. And then community is just a chat group, right? It's just a place where everyone who's in the membership can chat, and obviously you as a membership owner would go in there. Okay,
And that could be
so that's it.
just a forum. And since you mentioned that, I'll just attach to that too,
Yeah,
that it seems pretty well established that you need to have the first 100 days of the member's journey figured out somewhat ahead of time, because if you can, the data is showing now that if a member has a really good experience during that 100-day journey towards that transformation of whatever they're trying to achieve,
yeah,
if they can stay engaged, or if you can keep them engaged for that first 100 days, the possibility of getting them as a lifetime member or a very long-term member goes through the roof. But it
yeah,
takes about 90 to 100 days to reach that magic point. So
yeah.
it doesn't mean that you necessarily on day one have to have 100 days worth of content, but if you want to maintain those really long sustained members, having that 100-day journey be very impactful is the way. At least that's what I'm seeing. Are you getting the
Well,
same
you're very
information?
advanced, so this is true, everything you just said. But what I was trying to encourage was those people who are like maybe wondering whether if they've got a course or an information
Mhm.
product, and they're thinking, should I do how do I do a membership? Should I do a membership? All I'm saying is that however much you're going to charge for the
Mhm.
course, charge the same amount every month and put a community and coaching element in it.
That's right.
Then to answer your question, the 90-day, 100-day journey thing, you have to have a great onboarding process and give them a quick win. Let them experience something within the first moment they're inside of your membership that gives them some kind of quick win, some kind of like sense of success, right? There's nothing better for retention than success, right? Progress is the fun when we feel progress, we have fun and we want more of it. When we're not making any progress, that's when we cancel our subscriptions. That's when we stop attending the thing. And for the 100-day journey, it doesn't even have to be mapped out through content. It can be mapped out through the coaching, right? So the information product can teach the core principles or the basic skills, and then the coaching is the thing what people come back for. So you plant a seed. You say, well, it's going to take you a year to master this. I always say that to my members. This is going to take a year. You're paying every month, but I want you to give yourself a year. So you're already reframing it from way over 100 days, and you tell them we're going to go through a time together, and you can relate it very easily to building muscle. It's something that everyone can relate to, or losing weight. You can just say, yes, I can tell you in like 1 week how to do it, but it's going to take us a year to actually do it.
John, you've been fantastic, and I think you're just like I said. I definitely I've talked to a couple of people about the content that they have and you have is definitely book worthy. So I definitely
Thank you.
if that's
Appreciate
something you're
it.
interested in, I would encourage you to pursue it. So how can they find you? I know you have a fantastic website. You're on Facebook, of course. We'll put those links in the description so everybody could reach you. But if you say them here, we can have the editor put them up on screen as well.
Well, thank you. I by the time anyone sees this podcast, it might be different, but a lot of my work is behind the scenes. I do outreach, so I'm not really that proud of my front of house stuff, but for sure it's there. And my website is just manymoremembers.com. Right. So
Fantastic.
it's my thing. I help you get many more members. It's what everybody wants, right, in their membership. So, I can help you, especially if you already down the journey and you want more members. If you're just starting out, I can help you a little bit, but I like to work with people who are feeling a bit stuck. And then online, I went with John Robinson AI. So my name is John with an H, John, and then Robinson AI. So we're working on using AI inside of our memberships to grow them and to get save time and money, right? So
Fantastic.
John Robinson AI, you'll find me mostly on Instagram and YouTube,
And
and
is
then
your
manymoremembers.com.
and your Facebook, is that publicly
Same.
available too?
Yeah, same.
They can follow you on there?
Yeah, yeah. Don't mind Facebook as well. Yeah.
Because those reels, I think they really sell your talent. I mean,
Thank you.
you get on there and I was like, wow, he clearly, but you've been through, to kind of repeat what we said earlier, you've had a massive amount of experience with membership models through three very successful ventures. So, yeah,
Yeah, and
man,
a couple of my clients are doing great. I've got a client who's pushing 7 figures at the minute as well in the music industry. He's got a membership site, drum membership. Yeah, we're getting 6 figures from 0 to 6 figures with 2 other clients. So yeah, I'm just suppose I should do it with my own membership, right? That's the next step for me. You said make a book, but I'm working on my own low ticket membership. It's
sure.
not ready yet, but it's going to basically be all of my coachings just inside of a more of a one-to-many model. So watch this
Fantastic.
space. Thanks for your time, Robert.
Thank you, John. Have a good day. I appreciate you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you for joining us on the Free Time Mastermind podcast. I'm your host, Robert Gaines, and we appreciate you stopping in and checking out the channel. If you would, please click like, subscribe, hit the notification button, leave a comment, share the video with someone. We've got some fantastic episodes coming up. Also, too, for today's guest, check out the description to find out more about them, and also look at the links that we've posted below that for ways to get connected with us. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.